This is the Bluetti AC50. Now, this is pretty much one of their smallest units that they have. This is not meant for emergency backup or anything like that, but more so just portable power. Right now, I'm charging up my drone batteries. If you haven't seen the Skydio 2, really nice drone. I really like it. This is the drone that I use for some of my videos here, and this is my 40-quart DC fridge, which looks like a cooler, but it's actually a fridge. And I've taken this on many road trips. It works really well. And it's nice because it plugs straight into here, into the DC port, where it's very efficient. Now, this unit compares to like the Jackery 500, the Sungsu 500. We've also got the EcoFloat River Max, and even the EcoPower PS500. So I do test a number of these small units, and they do have their place for easy portability, recharging e-bikes, fridges, drone batteries, stuff like that. We're gonna see just how well it works. So this will be a full review of the Bluetti AC50. Now, the biggest difference of this unit versus like the Jackery 500 or the EcoFlow River 600 Max and the Sungsu 500, all of those units have about 500 watt sized inverters. This only has a 300 watt inverter. So it does have a 500 watt hour battery, but a smaller inverter when compared to other units of similar size. In true Bluetti fashion, the screen doesn't stay on, which is one thing I really dislike. The newer Jackery units do the same, and even the EcoFlow units also do it. I just like to have the screen on because I want to be able to see from a distance what's going on. Maybe someday some company will listen to that, but right now it says I'm pulling 55 watts onto the fridge and 65 watts into here. And this is just a battery charger for my drone. And it's got some USB ports, a couple of AC plugs, one cigarette lighter port. It does have a cordless or wireless charging pad here on the top that does work with wireless charging phones and has an output of 10 watts. It does have these built-in carry handles, which actually really do come in handy. And then on the back side, there is a light. It's got 3 different settings on a high, low, and SOS. I've not really had much use for lights on systems like this, but every now and then you get to use it and it actually does help. The most sense that it makes for me is, for example, if you have it at a picnic in the evening or at night or something like that, you're lighting up a small area, more so like in a tent or maybe in a really small travel trailer. In that regard, I think it makes sense to have a light, but other than that, I mean, I'm not going to use this for a flashlight for sure. But one really cool feature is the solar input. Even though this only has a 500 watt hour battery, it does have a charge parameter from 14 volts all the way to 40 volts and up to 10 amps. So realistically, I could put 2 100 watt solar panels connected together in series and plug that into here, or 2 100 watt solar panels connected in parallel plugged into here. Now, that charge parameter alone beats even the Jackery 500 as well as the EcoPower PS500, but the EcoFlow still beats this because this is limited to 120 watts of solar input. But even still, that's more than the Jackery has to offer. Now, I have taken this specific unit on a few road trips with me, even one of them all the way down to Texas, and it was running this DC fridge on that trip. The issue that I had was because I was running it out of this DC port, and with this vibrating and shaking inside the truck, the issue came in where the plug is, as it vibrated, it would slowly vibrate out of place. And this actually just turned off with me just barely wiggling this. I push it in, and then it kind of pushes its own way out. So the fridge is running right now. I don't know if the microphone is picking it up because the fan's pretty quiet on it. But as I just barely jiggle this, I don't know if you heard that, it just turned off. I mean, it's right on the edge of working and not working. It's actually kicking on and off. So if you'll notice, when I push this in all the way, it kind of springs back out on its own. And then as it jiggles, it slowly works out even more and more. I'm not pulling on it, I'm just jiggling it, and it slowly works its way out. So on that road trip, I ended up having to use just the AC plug in order to keep it plugged in, so it's not as efficient, but it did end up working for that trip. Now, the other thing to keep in mind with this unit is that it does have an auto shutoff. Usually the Bluetti systems do. I know the EB150, EB240 also have that. Basically what that means is if there isn't a draw of power on this for a certain amount of time, it will automatically turn off. I've also run into this issue because this DC fridge is very efficient, especially when it's full of food. I've had it happen where this didn't turn back on for a very long time. And so because this didn't sense any power being used, it actually just shut off. And because of that, the fridge never turned back on. So luckily I caught that and the food didn't go bad. But be aware of that. If this is something you want to do, it will turn off on its own if it's not being used. And in most regards, that's actually a good thing, because you don't want it just draining its battery by running these lights or keeping the inverter on. But otherwise, if you are going to be running something intermittently, just make sure you check on it every now and then. Now I've plugged in this extension cord here, which is connected to my array of lights. We're already running about 110 watts. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on a couple of lights and see what happens when we get this to over 300 watts. That was interesting. We're just barely over 300 watts total, and then it turned off the DC power. Let me make sure this is still plugged in. Maybe that's all it was. Oh, I'm getting an error reading up on the refrigerator. It says error 1, which is a fault in power. Okay, let's try plugging this back in. Just turned off one of the lights. Okay, the fridge is turned back on, the screen is on, and it looks like there goes the power. So that was really interesting because it was only pulling about 50 watts, and this was pulling about 250 watts. Usually you can go over by just a tiny bit and there's no problems. I've seen upwards of 5 to 10%. So with a 300 watt inverter, in theory it should be able to go up to 315 to 330 watts without actually shutting down. So it's definitely pulling right close to 300 watts, and it's not having a problem right now. So that's a good thing to be aware of, is you definitely cannot exceed that 300 watt mark at all, otherwise this will shut off. So I'm gonna let this run down a little bit and then we'll see how well it charges off the solar. Did a nice hard drain on it, and now we're down to what it says, 20%. One of the things I dislike about displays like this is when they just have like a picture of a battery and it has different bars showing its level, because I don't know if this is at 15%, 11%, or 22%. It's just somewhere around 20%. Now, it's not a deal breaker, it's just a personal preference. I don't think it's that complicated to put an actual percentage here instead of a battery icon. But either way, this needs to get charged up, so I'm gonna go put it on the solar panels. So one of the things you'll need to get is this adapter plug. I'll have a link down below for it. It's an 8mm to MC4 adapter. Now, the voltage on these panels is basically 18 to 21 volts. That's pretty standard for a 100 watt solar panel, and about 5.5 amps. Now, we know that this will do 14 to 40 volts and up to 10 amps. So in theory, we should be able to connect one panel and definitely get some power. And then as well, be able to connect 2 panels and be able to really crank down on the power production into this. Okay, so that's definitely already charging up, going up quick. It's climbing from 60, going up to 70. Now, I'm going to connect 2 solar panels and let's put them in series. So this will increase the voltage and keep the amps the same, and see if we have an even better result. See if we can get close to that 120 watt input. The sun is not directly in front of the panels. There's actually probably a 35 to 30 degree angle away from the panel, so they won't be making 100% power, and that's okay. Yep, wow, going over 70, 80, 90. See if we max out at 120. Maybe the solar panels are being limited by the charge controller down just to 20 volts. And then getting right near that 5 amp mark, it seems to be limiting it just a little bit to make sure that it's not going over. But either way, we can see it's definitely capable of getting at least close to the 120 watts, which is quite impressive. And I'm going to do the same test by connecting these in parallel. Just as a quick clarification, series connection means you go from one panel to the next panel to the next panel, and that will increase the voltage. So if this is 20 volts and 20 volts and 20 volts, that'll be 60 volts. But to connect something in parallel, I'm going to use these branch connectors, and you can see I've got male ends here, female ends here, and all I'm going to do is these male connectors, put them into here. So now I'm putting these in a parallel connection, and then it combines inside the branch connector. So what'll happen is, since these are each about 20 volts, they'll stay 20 volts power going in, but for every panel that is connected here, so because I have 2 of these, it'll go up by 5 amps. Going right up straight away, 70, 80, 90, 100, and it stopped again exactly at 114. Oh, no, it just went to 115. So must just be the angle of the sun. We could probably get right at 120 here. And that's just cool that you could actually get the full input that it's rated to, that it says here, because it's so common that solar generator companies mess up on the solar charging. It is the #1 thing that solar generator companies do poorly. It means I can charge this in as little as 4 hours. So the next question is, can I run something off this while it's charging? Let's test that. I've got my 40 volt Ryobi battery here, and I even have a video about my 40 volt Ryobi chainsaw and how we cut up a tree that fell over our driveway. Yeah, it's pulling 62 watts while inputting 114. So that is an awesome feature. Not always included in solar generators is the ability to charge and power something at the same time. So very good on Bluetti for doing that. There you have it. This is the Bluetti AC50. It works pretty dang well for its purposes. Running something like a DC fridge, recharging drones, recharging portable batteries on tools while you're out and about. It's very lightweight. Throw it on the scale here really quick. Weighing in at exactly 13.5 pounds. This is really easy to transport around. So because of that, this is something I could say I could definitely recommend if you need portable power, very lightweight for simple things. I'm going to reiterate, this is not meant for running things like a refrigerator or a freezer during an emergency or blackout or anything like that. So I'll have links down below for everything, as well as the best price to get this, as well as all the accessories and anything else you may need. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be prepared. I'll see you in the next video.